At 9:12 that morning, I was halfway through my eggs when a cop walked into the diner and tried to throw me out for being suspicious. And if you think that sounds like the start of a joke, yeah, I thought so too. For about 5 seconds, right up until his hand touched his handcuffs, and I realized he wasn't joking at all, he was serious. Dead serious. The kind of serious that makes a room go quiet without anyone saying a word. I remember thinking how strange it was that something so ordinary, a plate of breakfast, a booth by the wall, coffee steam curling up slow, could flip into something that felt like a courtroom without a judge. And the wild part is, none of it had to happen. Not 1 second of it, but it did. And I was there sitting across from my partner Malik, watching it unfold like a scene that didn't know it was being filmed. We'd picked that booth for the same reason we always did. Backs to the wall, eyes on the door habit you don't lose after years of undercover work. And if you looked at us, you'd just see two guys in hoodies killing time before work. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just coffee, eggs, and a phone on the table with case notes open. The place smelled like toast and fryer grease, country music, humming low dishes, clinking people, minding their business. Then the bell over the door rang and in walked Officer Ryan Cole, tall guy, squared shoulders, hand already hooked on his belt, like he'd practiced that pose in the mirror. And the thing that stuck with me was, he didn't glance around the room the way most officers do, didn't scan faces, didn't nod at the owner. He just locked onto us like someone had drawn an arrow from the entrance straight to our table. You ever feel someone's authority before they even speak, like a pressure change in the air? Yeah, that happened. He stopped at the edge of our booth, close enough his shadow stretched across our plates, and said, IDs. No hello, no introduction, no explanation, just IDs, like he was ordering coffee. Malik set his mug down, slow ceramic clicking against the table, and I looked up and asked him, calm, real calm for what? He didn't shift, didn't blink, just said, got a call. 2 suspicious men. Not suspicious activity, not suspicious behavior, just suspicious men. And that right there told me everything about the situation, even before it really started. I tilted my head a little and asked suspicious how. He said, you match the description. Malik leaned forward, half an inch, voice steady. What description? Silence. Not confused silence, not thinking silence, but the kind where someone realizes they skipped the part where facts are supposed to exist. Around us, forked, slowed conversations, dropped people pretending not to stare while absolutely staring, and behind the counter, the owner Daniel leaned out polishing the same glass over and over, like he suddenly forgot what clean looked like. We didn't move, didn't reach into pockets, didn't raise our voices, just sat there. I said, we're eating breakfast. His tone sharpened a notch. ID. Now. Not loud, just tighter, like he expected gravity to stop working if we didn't obey. I asked him, do you have a legal reason to request that? He exhaled through his nose, fingers tapping his cuffs, metal clinking soft, and said, somebody reported we were scoping the place. Malik asked, scoping it how? No answer. The air got heavier, like the whole room knew we'd crossed from conversation into something else. Daniel finally spoke up from behind us. Careful voice. Is there a problem? The officer didn't even look at him. I'm handling it. Daniel said, they're customers. The officer said, stay out of it. That was the first spark you could feel it like static before lightning. The officer held his hand out, palm open, waiting. Last time, IDs. I looked down at my eggs going cold, then back at him. We haven't done anything. He leaned closer. You match the description. Malik asked again. Quieter this time. What description? Still nothing. That's when he unhooked his cuffs. Didn't snap them, didn't wave them, just let them hang where we could see the metal curve catching the light. A silent little threat sitting there between us and our breakfast, you know what I mean. Sometimes a gesture says more than a speech. Stand up, he said. Neither of us moved. Malik replied, we're not under arrest. The officer nudged Malik's chair with his boot just to scrape barely half an inch. Now you might be. And there it was. The shift the exact second a request turns into pressure when authority decides it doesn't need a reason anymore. We exchanged one glance, the kind partners use when they've worked together long enough not to need words. And slowly we reached into our pockets, pulled out our IDs and set them on the table, not handed to him, just placed there. He picked them up with 2 fingers like they might stain him and walked out to his cruiser without another word. Through the window we watched him run our name's engine still idling, morning sun reflecting off the windshield. Inside the diner, nobody spoke. Coffee stopped steaming. Even the music felt quieter. 3 minutes passed before he came back in IDs in hand. No warrants, no priors, he said, tossing them onto the table so they slid across the wood. Then he added, "Get out." I blinked once. "On what grounds?" he said. "Because I said so." Daniel stepped closer behind him. "I'm not asking them to leave." The officer's hand drifted back toward his cuffs. "You want to be in my report?" Daniel asked. "What report?" There was no notebook, no pen, nothing written. Malik looked at the cuffs on the table. I kept my eyes on the officer. Malik said, calm as ever, "We're not leaving." The officer reached toward my shoulder, hand hovering just before contact. Fingers curled like he was already imagining the grip. And that, right there, was the breaking point. Not the words, not the stare, not even the threat. It was that hand hanging in the air, deciding it had permission. I reached into my jacket slowly. No sudden moves, pulled out my badge and set it on the table. Malik set his beside mine. 2 badges lying there next to his handcuffs, metal against wood. I said quietly, "Detective Ethan Brooks. This is Detective Jordan Reed." You could hear the whole diner inhale. He froze, hands still in the air like it forgot who it belonged to. Malik nodded toward his chest. "Your body cam's recording. You just threatened to arrest 2 officers while they were eating." Silence filled the place so thick you could almost taste it. The officer looked at the badges, then at the phones, pointed at him, then at the door. Slowly he clipped his cuffs back onto his belt. "I didn't know," he said. And honestly, that might have been the truest thing he said all morning, because he didn't know who we were, didn't know what we did, didn't know the room was full of cameras. And that was the problem, because if we hadn't been detectives, if we'd just been 2 regular guys in hoodies, that moment probably wouldn't have ended the same way. I picked up my phone and snapped a photo of his body cam. Nobody stopped me. A few minutes later, 2 more officers came in calm. No sirens, internal affairs. They asked him to step outside, collected his cam, took the diner footage Daniel handed over, got the recording from a woman near the window. Even a guy with a chest cam passed them his file. Malik and I didn't leave. We sat there, finished our coffee, ate our now cold breakfast, while the investigation started around us like background noise. That afternoon, Ryan Cole was pulled off patrol. 3 weeks later, he was fired, official reason stating he demanded identification without legal cause and threatened arrest without grounds. Old complaints against him got reopened, ones that had been buried before. Lawsuits were filed, the city settled out of court. Daniel received compensation. We received compensation, and we donated every dollar to a civil legal aid fund, because the point wasn't the money. It was the proof, the record, the undeniable timeline that showed exactly what happened when authority forgets its limits. Policies changed after that. Requests for ID without a clear violation now needed supervisor approval. Body cam footage started getting audited. Complaint histories had to be reviewed instead of ignored. Cole appealed his termination twice. Denied twice. He doesn't wear a badge anymore. The diner still opens every morning, same bell over the door, same smell of coffee and grease, same back booth against the wall. Daniel keeps it open most days. Malik and I still stop in sometimes, still sit, facing the door, still drink coffee and talk cases like nothing happened, and nobody brings it up out loud. No speeches, no signs, no victory laps. Just a memory sitting there in that booth like an invisible third person. But I'll tell you what stays with me. It wasn't when he ordered us out. It wasn't when he threatened arrest. It wasn't even when he saw the badges. It was the sound of those cuffs touching the table, that little metal click, because that was the exact second power decided it didn't need a reason. And I keep wondering, if there hadn't been cameras, if nobody had recorded, if it was just his word against ours, how would that story have ended? Would he have dragged us up, written a report, claimed we resisted, claimed we matched something we never matched? And if it almost happened to us, 2 detectives sitting quietly at breakfast, what do you think happens every day to people who don't have badges in their pockets? That's the part I can't shake. So I want you to tell me honestly in the comments, was this justice working the way it should, or justice getting lucky because somebody pressed record? And have you ever witnessed something like this yourself that people wouldn't believe unless they saw it on camera?